aside from the spirituality, barring the spiritual aspect of it, which from what I understand does not in and of itself cost any money. Okay. Aside from that, what does giving money, I'm talking about Black church in particular, but I guess you can make a case for all churches. But for us, a particularly vulnerable people in this country who espouse this faith so much, what is it that our dollars translate into in terms of enriching our lives? Now, again, you can make the argument all day long that if I give, then God will give it back to me. You could make that argument, sure. But when we set that aside and we have a linear, logical argument, a pragmatic conversation about finances, which we have a problem with in this country as a people, we have tons of churches, right? These aren't like politicians where if we sow into their campaign, they can then go and represent our interests and then lobby for our unions, and then we can get stronger pay and blah, blah. There's measurable outcomes there. Outside of that, what does giving $100 to a church turn into aside from the building fund, or aside from whoever this guy is with his, well, I don't want to act like he's nobody because I know who Marvin Sapp is, but in his Rolls Royce, asking for another $40,000. And again, there might be a sensible answer to this question. I don't want to presume that there isn't, but I just, as a person that's grown up in it, I have not found it. I've just found that churches tend to struggle using congregations that are struggling. And then it's a cycle of struggle. And, we've been waiting decades, centuries for God to show up and whatever. And the reality that we live in is kind of like, well, shoot, should we be doing something for ourselves in addition to waiting for God? Because if what we're doing is continuing to ask people who are struggling for $20 so that we can put together $40,000 to pay for whatever we need $40,000 for, that's happened enough times in my life to where now I'm like, to what end? And again, I know that there's a ton of people who have a tremendous sense of faith on this call. I will always have a sense of faith, but I think that we're well past the time where we should start asking sensible questions like that. Why is this even a story? Why would this guy even be able to ask for $40,000? Where is the reset? Have we been so indoctrinated, with the idea that blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white Jesus is going to come save us, that we have abandoned all sense of accountability and responsibility for our own journey through this life? I know that if you're listening to my voice right now, you know a person that was born in poverty, lived their whole life in poverty, and died in poverty the whole time. And the only thing that brings you comfort is your belief that that person is in heaven celebrating riches. Meanwhile, everyone else around you, every other race, you name it, those people don't sow anything into the church. They don't, none of that stuff. And they get to live their paradise right here on earth. And when we look at the way that they live their lifestyle, when we look at the way that they, sow into their communities, not through church, but through businesses, through, you name it. Mm-hmm. They don't have to have a belief that one day they will return to their father's house and have many mansions, right? And so I think this is such a wild story. And I just feel like this is the sort of thing that happens to us more frequently than other folks. So I'll leave it there. You can attack me in the comments if you want, but I still love you and I still love God. So, we'll go from there.